You are listening to Verb Minute, where words do remain.
Hello and welcome back to Inkling. This is the show where we discuss different works regarding the topic of inequalities. And my name is Vidar.
And I'm Tanfei.
And today we'll be discussing the book The Class Ceiling by Samuel Friedman and Daniel Laurison. This is a book which people in the Inequalities seminar will be reading chapters of, and one which Tanfei has read in its entirety, in fact, for that class last year.
Yeah.
So, to start us off, can you give us some brief key ideas of this book?
Sure. So basically, this book is a very approachable compilation of socioeconomic research on the workforce in the UK. And basically it's a research by comparing class origins and class destinations to see how sticky social mobility actually is. And the book actually took a very Bourdieusian approach to class, to privilege, to habitus, in trying to explain how there's a class ceiling, which is a term borrowed from the glass ceiling for sex inequalities, gender inequalities, in the context of social mobility for economic classes. So basically, it tells us that in the UK, at least, and also to a certain extent in France and Australia, which the book briefly mentioned, there is a maximum income that different social classes can aspire to, and it is different for each class. Well, the people from a higher socioeconomic class can aspire to a higher income, and those from working class backgrounds can only wish for a less amount based on social statistics.
So just to make that clear, essentially it's saying that people from one given class are more likely to stay within that class, or rather their children.
Yes.
And there's not that much of movement between these sectors. Is that right? Or how do they present this idea?
Yeah. It's actually more nuanced than that, but the general idea is that like a transmission of social class through generations is actually more dominant than upward mobility. There are many beautiful graphics showing how from each social class, originating from each social class, people of a larger proportion of people stay in the same social class, while you see this tiny little stream of a thin line representing the proportion of people that's moving up, but also people that move down from top classes are also like a minority. And this book actually tries to draw attention to the disparities between who's given a platform and who is not, and also the disparity between what's recognized as merit and what is actually basically like social and economic and cultural capital that we have accumulated from our social backgrounds. And yeah, it's basically an argument against pretty much meritocracy, and to see that where our parents landed us on the social ladder basically tells the future of our careers and our quality of life.
Right.
Yeah.
I think one interesting part about this is that, as you said, it's already difficult for people to move beyond the sort of move beyond their origins, so to say. They're likely to end up in the same places where they come from. But for those who do that, for a person, let's say, of a working class background who ends up in a consulting firm or one of these let's say managerial positions, they make a distinction between getting into that job and getting on with your colleagues in that job. Yes. So could you talk about how that is materialized and what they discuss regarding that.
Yes, of course. This book is actually very illuminating to me, at least, because it shows the difference between equality of access and equality of outcome. You can't have one without the other. And the equality of access is what's really easy and really headline grabbing to talk about. But equality of outcome is something more murky and more pernicious, actually, in this grand game of social mobility. In this book, the author chose 4 sectors and basically 3 companies representing 3 of the sectors and 1 group that's basically doing creative job and acting. And another that's 6TV, which is a media company doing like shows and TV productions. Turner Clark as a consultancy firm, and Cooper as an architecture firm. So these companies already, we see that people who have access to managerial professional jobs at the top of the company's hierarchy, most of them are already from privileged backgrounds, and fewer of them are from working class families. But even if you look at the same echelon on the hierarchy of the firm, those who are from professional family backgrounds earn more than those who are from working class backgrounds, even if they are within the same department, the same division, doing similar jobs alongside each other.
And why is that? Why do they get the same wage despite being in the same role? Kind of?
There are multiple factors. Sometimes it's the minute division of jobs that keep the most important, I would say, like decision making power in the hands of those who are more privileged in terms of background, and those who are so basically the president and the vice president. You know, so who's the vice and who's the assistant producer, who is the main producer. That's the difference if we break it down to the minute like specialization of the jobs within the same category of managing.
Okay.
You know, and also this is sometimes the case because of how working class families have their kids less integrated into the grand game of like corporate hierarchy climbing. The book talks about fitting in terms of what kind of dressing codes the company have, what kind of working culture in terms of what people talk about over coffee breaks, what people talk about over like a beer after work. And also what kind of ideas they pitch to their employers, how they fight for their promotion opportunities, whether they have this awareness to constantly display their credentials. So these are the rules of the game that are hidden in the habitus of our upbringing. That some may not have the privilege to be trained so early into this kind of like behavioral patterns. Yeah.
I remember one part of the book that we discussed last year was regarding the manager at the 6TV firm, who said that once he entered like the upper managerial break room or whatever, some sort of like the boardroom or something like that, he said that the atmosphere of that place was exactly the same essentially as that of his university, and he'd gone to Oxford or Cambridge or one of these places. So obviously this is in the UK context and that's the reference point, but I guess not just in clothing, but in the way we speak and the way we present ourselves in general. The book is making the case that all of this is kind of determining in where you end up within these places and how well you get on with other people. Is that the way you see it as well?
Yes, and there is a significant factor in play in terms of how some people get on while others don't, is in this chapter called The Bank of Mom and Dad. It's not only talking about financial support from parents in the sense of in the sense of helping artists like survive their dry sprouts, basically helping them to survive when they don't have creative opportunities coming for them, which makes them more selective in what kind of job they do. And this helps them to build a resume that is more impressive, more eye-catching than those who have to take on odd jobs because they have to survive while taking this ambitious move of working in a creative industry.
Or taking an unpaid internship.
Exactly. So the Bank of Our Parents also provide social networks. In the summer, maybe you can work at your parents' friend's company, or you go and be a research assistant to your aunt's professor's daughter, stuff like this. So it's also a social network bank. And all these gave us the kind of credentials that will make us stand out when we try to find a job, when we present ourselves, and basically, so it basically brings us into a professional world that is already very privileged. And then from there we learn many rules of the game that are not accessible to those who don't have a door to this world. Basically, I think for me, just talking from my own experience, I had the privilege of visiting several consultancy firms with my school back in Singapore when we did career exhibitions. And exactly, I saw how people in the professional working place dressed, like how they behaved, how they carried themselves. And I have had internships that opened up my eyes to the industrial standards of doing slides, doing posters, so that when I apply for internships, when they have assessments on, for example, like they gave you data and ask you to do something on the spot, I know what they're looking for. But those who hadn't had such experiences will just DIY their way through. And they have a slimmer chance of getting it. I
think that's interesting, because that's kind of like the raw, work competencies, let's say, like know how to structure things, how to make a appealing PowerPoint presentation or something like that, let's say, which obviously our university is also kind of teaching us, right? Like that's why we have so many presentations in our classes. But I think something that's interesting here in at least this chapter that I read is also the idea of these things that we don't take for granted as much, and don't appreciate as important as the actual raw work knowledge, like knowing how to structure these things. But then what's also interesting about this point about, knowing how to dress in the right way, or knowing when to crack a joke, or knowing when you can be like a bit cheeky, or I don't know, be kind of rude but still friendly in the right way that's appropriate. These sorts of things, they come from our background, right? And it's something where they also mention that people trying to adapt to that, like who are not from that background, who, I don't know, let's say try to swear at a meeting at the right time, then so many times it doesn't really work the way they expect or want. It just kind of goes badly. And so could you talk a little bit about that, like the attempt of people to get on despite not having the same kind of cultural reference point or cultural background as those in their workplace?
There's this part where the interviewee from 6TV, the media firm, mentioned that when they pitch for new ideas for TV production, sometimes the most highbrow references from literature like Shakespeare or Virginia Woolf gets the most attention because they carry somehow they carry the most cultural weight and cultural significance. And this kind of references also somehow signals the creator's depth of ideas and passion for a certain topic, that just makes you instantly feel that if you put this project on this person, it is safe. Of course, it's very misguided, and nowadays creativity is valued for many different reasons. We shouldn't be tied down to canonical values and references anymore, but somehow instinctively or however it is, we still get impressed, basically.
Yeah. We think it's like very advanced because this person has read Shakespeare or whatever.
Yeah, and for those who didn't go to such privileged background, these privileged educational paths, they have a sense of not fitting in. They sometimes might have this imposter syndrome that the authors also talked about. They start to self-eliminate from this world when they've already tried so hard to get to the same position as their peers who are throwing in cultural references and impressing their bosses. So they don't feel comfortable or they don't feel compatible to those who are working alongside them. And they hang around for a shorter period of time. Yeah. They quit earlier and they become the quitters, as we say, because they don't want to put in enough effort. But this is not effort that we put in, This is a deliberate decision, or maybe also subconscious if we give it to them, that they are more apt at cashing in their credentials. They know how to use what they've been given with. They know how to mobilize their resources in their brain, in their social life, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Essentially, I guess also that frustration that comes with thinking, okay, I know I'm good at my job. I know what I'm doing. I am a consultant and I know how to do consultant things. Personally, I'm not sure what consultants do, so I'm not going to refer to anything. But that frustration with being good at your job, but then still not being able to advance or advance as far, just because of the fact that you don't know the right moment to make that stupid joke, that your colleague makes or something like that. But something that's interesting about this as well is that it's kind of different for these different companies that they looked at, right? So it's not that for an actor and a person at the architecture firm, it's the similar situation, right?
No, it's not the same. Yeah, the book specifically pointed out that there is no statistically significant class ceiling in Cooper, which is the architecture firm. But there is a very clear gender inequality, gender pay gap in such technical sectors. So it's one way or another, there's some sort of earning gap between different social groups. Basically, we see that sectors that involve more social and cultural capital, like acting, entertainment, media, and also consultancy, which relies on what kind of customers you can bring, what kind of clients you can bring to the company. These kinds of sectors have very clear divides in terms of who's working for which division of the company, who's the managers and who are managed. For technical sectors like engineering, architecture, these are a bit more fluid in terms of class structures, but male dominated nonetheless. And some specific specializations are like straddled in between. So doctors, lawyers usually come from families of doctors and families of lawyers.
Right.
Those are the professions with the highest entry barrier to working class origin, and basically people from less privileged backgrounds, and they are still professionally speaking more technical, but those techniques are somehow family related. Yeah.
That's interesting. So essentially, like you have a much higher chance of being able to become like a top engineer at a firm than you do to become a top doctor if you come from a working class background.
Yes, right. According to the statistics in this book from the UK, which is
But I think it's quite generalizable, right, to other
that's
Western society, or I think even.
Bourdieu also mentioned it in his in some of his studies on education. The choice of majors in school.
Yes.
We see more more students from working class families choosing to study electrical engineering, engineering in general, also basically like technical work more than Greek. Or Latin, or
acting, right?
Or acting, or art history, or music, stuff like this.
So one point that I wanted to shift our conversation to a little bit is the why. Why are things this way, and what's the purpose of this sort of class discriminating system? Is it merely the fact that these people within the companies who are kind of discriminating their co-workers based on these subtle class markers are doing so subconsciously just because, I don't know, one person is used to a certain kind of humor and the other person is replicating that and so they like them? Or is there something more conscious and deliberate about this, of saying like, oh, I can tell, you're wearing a black belt with the brown shoes. You're not really sure about what's going on at this company. How do you see this?
Okay. I'll try to unpack the question because it's actually really complex. For those who are from the upper echelon of the society, who ended up in very comfortable situations in their job and in their life. In this book, many interviewees like this, they mentioned how they felt the inequality. They felt that it's inherently unfair. It's an unfair business. How is it that I can just have the luck of having a father who has connections somewhere and somewhere else? Basically, they say that it's an ugly inequality. But they talk from like a sense of a sense of resignation. They don't know how they can change the situation. For those who are in the decision-making positions, they explained this kind of class affinity as sometimes more dangerously as a recognition of talent. Of talent, good ideas, impressive thinking. Basically, these sometimes are influenced by the kind of educational resources and the kind of family backgrounds that people have. And these are basically privilege misconstrued as merit, which is talked about in depth by Michael Sandel in his book, The Tyranny of Merit. And I think that's very problematic, but most of the time, I think individually speaking, it's quite a subconscious affair. I mean, it's very natural, I guess, for people to click with people from the same social backgrounds.
Yeah.
They read the same kind of books, they watch the same kind of movies, and listen to similar music, and they have similar senses of humor. But institutionally speaking, sometimes it's the ruling class, the people who have the power to decide, that want to keep this privilege for their children, for people of the same kind, if you will. We have legacy admission in Ivy League schools. We have many like work groups that bring on children from, I don't know, from privileged backgrounds to know more about like the professional world that's more polished. Basically, there are family and social ties in this business.
Yes.
So there are, I would say, at least some traces of consciousness
Yes.
in this. However, on the other hand, working class people who have climbed up to the top, they know how it is, and they are conscious of this tyranny of merit, and they try sometimes to fight against it. And this is, I think, this is one piece of evidence that gave me the most hope, actually, in this book. Not the epilogue with 5 ways or 10 ways to break the class ceiling. It's actually the personal accounts of managers from working class families who told the researchers that he made conscious decisions to be more patient with the working class like recruits, to give more attention to those who need support, not in the professional sense, but also in the psychological sense. Those who need to reconcile this gap that does not say anything about their skills, their professional skills and their abilities, but rather it's something that they can learn over time to be more comfortable in the game, to be more adaptable, to be more flexible, to feel more like themselves, so-called, in this professional working environment that is constructed for the privileged.
Yeah.
So I think, and for those employees, without this kind of help, it is actually very disorientating. They are not aware of the inequalities sometimes. Maybe afterwards, it's an afterthought. But when they are in it, they are very confused usually as to why I don't get promoted. How am I appearing so dumb all the time? Why can't I, like just respond to that quib or respond to this joke that's coming my way? Why didn't I like catch it and bring it on and let it flow? It just stopped at me, and then it passed on to the next person. Why didn't I understand the dressing codes? Why didn't I know how to bring on more valuable clients to the company? They misconstrue it as maybe
like a personal fault.
Yeah, like a personal fault. They themselves don't see it. And it's the more sympathetic and more empathetic employers that bring them on and help them to overcome this, or else they are pretty much lost. Yeah.
And so those people who are more likely to be encouraging and empathetic, as you're saying, you think they're normally, or the book was saying that it's normally people who have been in that situation themselves, or is that kind of the point, like your takeaway is that to kind of lessen this hardship that we see explained in this book, like about despite you being good at your work, not being recognized for it because of these class markers that you don't have because of reasons that are not your fault. do you think that the way to kind of go beyond that or alleviate this problem is by getting people who are of different class origins into different positions in companies and institutions and organizations?
Yes, definitely. It's at the start when you said that only the people who have experienced the upward social mobility and how difficult psychologically it could be can sympathize with those who are going through the similar situation. I think it's the other way around. In the book they didn't say that those who can do this are only those who have experienced it. The book is rather saying that those who have experienced it are more likely to do it. So it's slightly different, but basically it's an invitation for more of us to really think about episodes in our lives when kind words, kind encouragements from a teacher or from a supervisor pushed us forward. It's basically to give people around us more time, more tolerance. Maybe they have talents that we haven't recognized yet. Maybe their talent isn't on the common value system that the society prescribes. So maybe try to be more open to different kinds of intelligence. Yeah. I think on the micro level, that's what we could do, because this book can be read as a micro level analysis with so many personal accounts and so many in-depth inquiries from real active workers in different companies. So it's actually quite personal and quite approachable. Yeah. It's not really calling for institutional changes, although it tried in the end. So basically in the end, there's this list of recommendations on how firms should be more transparent. They should analyze the class makeup of their employees. They should stop giving internships without pay, and also stop not advertising their internships and only relying on relationships to get interns. I think these are, cultural habits of the corporate world, which are quite different and quite difficult to break in different industries and basically in different countries. But I think the book is more of a conversation starter to try to raise awareness about how we define merit, how we define effort in the society is a relative affair, basically. Yeah.
So the key kind of takeaway is to approach our coworkers with, I suppose, patience, to see people and to see their virtues flourish over time, and not assume that just because a person is maybe quiet at the beginning or maybe doesn't make their voice heard at the start, does not possess positive virtues. Yeah. Also being empathetic and understanding, as you were saying, and recognizing that people have different sorts of virtues that are maybe, even if they aren't part of the norm, I mean, that can also be beneficial, right? Like bringing in something different can be extremely beneficial if it's also presented in an appealing way. And the third thing about this is also what you mentioned, being kind of humble. Yeah. To not prescribe and say that this is the way to act, this is the correct way to be a consultant, for example, but rather to recognize that there can be other, just because you don't know the exact etiquettes of a certain workplace culture doesn't mean that you're not a good worker. And
it doesn't make you dumb or whatever.
Yeah, or uncreative or unconfident. Maybe you are unconfident coming into it because it's a completely new place, but even if it is something different, I guess people can adapt and people can grow into a place that might be different from what they're used to, but still sort of make it their own or adapt that to their individuality.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's trying to advocate for a growth mindset, if you will, basically. Sometimes I think the book gives me this sense of, at least I struggled with it a lot, a sense of resignation at certain points, because basically if you can't fight the system yet, you have to learn the rules of the game.
Yeah.
And it's calling for the people who have more power to give those less privileged more time to learn. If they can't change much with their individual agency yet. I personally also struggle with this sense of like, maybe I would say hopelessness when it comes to like systemic discrimination like this. But sometimes when I hear about personal accounts of how they were brought on by very encouraging employers from whatever background the employer is from, like it can still be a very inspirational source of support. So maybe it's a better place to start there as like individuals who needs to learn to tolerate and learn to adapt more than giving any pretentious ideas about how I can save the workforce or the population from less privileged backgrounds. How I can bring equality overnight. It doesn't really happen. Yeah.
So essentially, to wrap up this podcast in brief ideas, the idea is to kind of lessen this trauma that is achieving some sort of social mobility and going from one class to another, which can often be a traumatic experience for an individual, to kind of lessen that hardship from people in that organization or people around like others. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, completely.
Okay. So before we wrap it up completely, would you have any final thoughts, any reflections about this book? Would you recommend it to other people, first of all?
Yes, I recommend it 100%, 120%. It's really easy to go through. And it's interview based, so you're like reading stories about other people's work life, which for me is a topic of my curiosity, because I do want to know how it's gonna look like when I go to work, and it's basically like the next step ahead. So I was really curious about this, and also it's a very salient reminder of how effort and talent are recognized based on a common value that is inherently the bourgeois value.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think a final thought to leave all the listeners with, which is something they in fact bring up in the introduction of the book, is a quote from Max Weber, the sociologist. In 1915, he said, "The fortunate man is seldom satisfied with the fact of being fortunate. Beyond this, he needs to know that he has a right to his good fortune. He wants to be convinced that he deserves it, and above all, that he deserves it in comparison with others. Good fortune thus wants to be legitimate fortune." I think that's a nice quote to round off this podcast. Do you have any final thoughts you want to bring up before we end it?
No.
Or are we good?
No,
Okay.
I think your quote summarizes it perfectly. Thank you very much, Vidar.
Great. This has been Inkling, the podcast about inequalities here on Verba Manet. I am Vidar.
And this is Tanfei.
And until next time, have a fine afternoon or evening or morning. Take care.
Take care.